All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining from. And you're already in 30 minutes, so welcome again. So my topic is on premises in Power BI world. Not just Power BI, but actually, it covers a lot in terms of what you consider as on-prem, but I'll relate it more to Power BI because I'll be talking about on-premises gateway as well. I'm Manohar Punna. I'm a data platform MVP. And you can reach me. The best way to reach me is my Twitter handle. I'm mostly responsive there. And professionally, I work as a BI manager at City FM Australia. So that's not FM as in radio, FM as in facilities management. All right. So Power BI Gateway is the tool or service that we use to actually connect from Microsoft Cloud services to your on-prem data sources. So as we all know, like Power BI is a service that is managed by Azure, managed by Microsoft. Sorry, um, I'm pretty sure they are running on Azure infrastructure. So my Power BI and many other Power Platform services, including other services which is not Power Platform like Azure Analysis Services, Logic Apps, is or also cloud services which use on-premises data gateway when you have to connect to an on-premises data source. So why do you need this gateway? It's a tunnel. Like how do you expose your on-premises data sets to a service that needs it to display your output, whether it's for automating few things or whether it's used for building some visualizations in your Power BI, or whether it's used for building your apps in Power Apps or for building your data models in Azure Analysis Services. For any of those which requires data as a source would need to connect to your on-premises, and the tunnel that helps you to connect instead of just exposing everything out to internet, you need a secure way of connecting to your data source and bringing that data to those services to for those specific use cases. Now, when you think about on-premises, you think about a data center sitting, in your office or somewhere in where you hire some hardware resources and put in your assets there, or a data center service provider who has got infrastructure that he provides it for you to host your own assets. So that could be a database, that could be a server. That could be a flat file sitting on a file share FTP, or an API service which you host internally and then you use it to extract some data out of your on-prem systems. Now, this is generally what you think about when you say the word on-prem. But essentially, I would also define some of the services which are on Azure as on-prem. Now, you may be confused. Sometimes you get mixed up with the term on-prem versus, okay, that is actually sitting on Azure, managed by Microsoft. How come it is on-prem? It's not sitting in my data center or it's not sitting in my office under my desk anywhere, right? So it's not physically on-prem. Literally, it's not on-prem. But the definition of on-prem comes from a networking concept. You need to classify a resource or an asset as on-prem or not based on where it lives in your network, or as part of your network. So whether it's on the public internet or whether it's in your private intranet, I would say. So the way you expose that data out to the public internet, if you are putting a gateway there and saying that you can't access that data set through a public IP or a public endpoint, then it's on-prem. I would define that as an on-prem, and you would need a different approach to actually get connect to that data source and bring the data out of it. So when you consider SQL Server on Azure, like maybe sitting on a VM, or SQL Server itself, where it's a logical container where you create individual SQL databases, and or like hyperscale or SQL DB, DTU based, VCO based, whatever it is, it's SQL database. You can consider Azure Data Lake, ADLS Gen 2, or for if you compare API, there is a API management service that on Azure that you can use, and all of these can be locked down pretty much from public access, and you can enable private endpoints or service endpoints on them. And when you enable private endpoint and restrict the public access to that resource, that means you are essentially considering it as an on-prem resource. And but from that point onwards, if you want to access that as a data source for your Power BI, Power Apps, Automate, any of those services, even though they are hosted in similar platform, like they are on Azure, they are hosted by Microsoft, but you still need to communicate between those two. You have to go through an on-premises data gateway. So that is as of today. Things will change in future. There are some preview features that are coming up, but as of as of date, like as of today, you need to use an on-premises data gateway to connect to these source data sources. So on-prem by definition doesn't mean that it is physically located on premises somewhere. It can be located on Azure, AWS, any of those services, which is cloud by definition, but you still restrict and consider it as on-prem by putting a shield in front of it. Basically, you lock it down, you put a private endpoint and give it a private IP address within your network. You can access internally without any restrictions, or depends on how your network is set up, but you can't access it directly through a public endpoint. So the public endpoint is closed. And the way you access it is by having the on-premises data gateway, which interacts to those cloud services in a specific way. So first I'll explain what on-premises data gateway helps you to do. So on-premises data gateway is a service or a software that you install on a virtual machine inside your network. So that means if you have got resources sitting on your own data centers, you basically install it on a machine which is sitting closer to your data sources, or you install it on a VM if you have got only Azure resources. What about scenarios where you have got both, a mix of both? You have got some server sitting at your office, you've got some SQL DB and Azure Data Lake and those kind of data sources sitting on Azure, but you want to get better performance out of both worlds. Basically, you create VMs on both the locations and you can make it a cluster. So that way, whatever requests are coming through, it will go to the closest. They share it's like it works like a cluster. So the request is sent to the location where it is closest to the data source, and that's how you can achieve it. It will help you achieve performance benefits. One, the second one is it will actually build resilience. So if one VM goes down, the other VM can still access all your data sources. So it builds high availability as well for your on-premises data gateway connection. Um, and the best out of it is like you can control the resource. Like if you want to make sure that your hardware costs are utilized in a better way, for already the hardware that you already procured, which is sitting on-prem, you can install on-prem on the VM, and also you can restrict the size of the VM on Azure where you're installing this resource and size it appropriately depending on your workload. So you can upsize, downsize depending on your workloads. So that's the benefit of having this service, and that will help you get your on-premises data sources into your cloud services for various purposes. The way this on-premises data gateway interacts with cloud services and with on-premises database, how does it fill the gap? So it frequently polls the Azure service bus to get the requests. It's a very plain statement, but I'll give you a complete picture. So this is how it looks. So in cloud services, you've got Azure Analysis Services. So that's the top layer. And Azure Analysis Services, Logic Apps, Power BI, Apps, and Power Apps and Power Automate, all those services use Gateway. Whenever a data is requested from those services, it goes to a Gateway cloud service, which is Microsoft managed. You don't have to worry about anything with that. And then it's written to an Azure service bus. And on premises, you install your on premises data gateway, and you need to open up outgoing connection from that particular VM. So basically you only open one port which will talk to Azure Service Bus. That's the only thing that you open from your network to the outside world. And when you open that up, basically on-premises data gateway frequently polls that Azure Service Bus to see if there is a data request. If there is a data request, it gets that in. All the credentials are saved on-premises data gateway. So it will decrypt what the credentials are for the source and sends the request to the source. On-premises data source gets the data. Once it gets the data, it pushes that data out to the cloud service to consume. So that's how basically the flow works. And the only point where you are exposing your your network to talk to outside world is that outgoing connection, outgoing network requests from on-premises data gateway to talk to the Azure Service Bus. Right. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover in this session. And I have put in some links. So once we figure out how we are uploading these slides, you will get to read more about on-premises data gateway. There are some issues that you frequently come up with on-premises data gateway that you can go through. And there's also a link to a Power BI security white paper, which explains the whole architecture, how the security works between on-premises data sources to Power BI service. With that, thank you. Thanks to William and Ben for organizing this. Thanks to DataGrillen. And really, I like the idea of data minutes and hope you've got something new, learned something new in this session. And
Yeah.
the best way to reach me is Manu Skill Geek. Thank you.